So this is the part of the show where we give you a sense of stories worth noting but aren't necessarily on your front pages. Our Newzroom Afrika reporter that's based in Mpumalanga, that's Mweli Masilela, was caught in a standoff between police and taxi operators in Kanyamazani outside Mbombela yesterday. The South African National Editors Forum has condemned the action of the police, saying they should have been more cautious before firing indiscriminately. For more on this now, I'm joined via Skype by SANEF's Executive Director, Kate Skinner. Kate, thanks very much for your time and welcome to the AM report. Look, on the face of it, some people may look at this instance and say, but this was a situation where a journalist happened to be in the firing line where police were firing indiscriminately. Why does it warrant any kind of, I guess, even commentary from an organization like SANEF? What would you say to people who are critics in that sense?
Look, I think that wouldn't be fair because, if we look at exactly what happened, it was absolutely clear that Masilela was a journalist. He was standing there with his tripod, with his camera, I chatted to him yesterday, and basically he said that he was fired at. He was interesting because he was basically saying that neither the protesters nor he as a journalist was allowed to get out of the way. Basically what happened is the police came in. They said out of the way, out of the way, out of the way, and then immediately proceeded to fire. And in fact, his view was that he was literally targeted. So that is hugely problematic on a number of levels. I mean, you shouldn't be immediately firing into a crowd. That's very dangerous. And also, obviously, with journalists need to be there. And so you should not be targeting journalists. Journalists should be given the space to be able to get somewhere safe and somewhere where they won't be targeted.
That's right. And sadly, we're seeing that this is not that unique. I mean, in the wake of the unrest all over the world, we've seen reporters from all kinds of organizations also being caught in the scuffles between protesters and police. Is this revealing to us for lack of a better term, a sign of ignorance from law enforcement officers about the fact that journalists need to be given the space to do their work, even during moments of volatility?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that it's important to say that during moments of volatility, moments of protest, journalists are particularly important. I mean, we need to know why our citizens are upset, why there are protests, what people on the ground are saying. And if journalists don't feel safe to be able to be covering those issues, then we as citizens are not going to know what's going on. So I think it is absolutely essential that the security authorities, ensure that journalist safety is protected. And it's that protection because we need a free flow of information. I think that's the critical issue that we need to point to.
Right. And I also know SANEF often speaks with the police minister about a number of issues. During those engagements, I mean, do you get a sense that this is top of mind for law enforcement authorities? Keeping in mind the fact that a journalist may be in the crowd that you're approaching and you need to apply the requisite sensitivities to be able to not be caught on the wrong side, as is the case with Masilela's case in Mpumalanga yesterday.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we are in constant contact with the police. I mean, you're completely right. Every time there's an incident, we speak to the police. We are now meeting. We've got a planned meeting with the police to discuss these issues. The thing which I think is interesting is that you can never stop talking about these issues. If you don't put it top of mind, it isn't top of mind because obviously the police have got a lot of issues to deal with. And so that's why we are constantly speaking to the police and making sure that they are aware of the issue. And hence the fact that we actually have a specific meeting to discuss it.
And of course, there's also considerations to be made for the actual journalists who are part of these stories. I imagine by the time Masilela returns to that scene, it might bring back memories at the very least. How best, I guess, can journalists continue to do their work to not only, I guess, try stave off contracting the coronavirus, but also trying to stave off being in the firing line the way Masilela was?
So I'm really glad you're asking that question, because at SANEF we've been very worried about journalists, because you're quite right. I mean, being on the firing line, it might feel all gung-ho and brave, but in fact there is long-term trauma that comes from these kind of incidents. And you could really be triggered in another similar incident. And so what we've been saying is that it's absolutely critical that journalists have counselling. And often there's a sense that journalists feel that they don't need to. But what we've picked up from international research that's been done on this area, it is absolutely critical that counselling services are provided, if possible within the media house itself, but also that that psychologists, etc., are contracted to media organisations, because undealt with trauma has all kinds of other implications. It really is very problematic for the long term.
We've seen instances where police have reacted in a very overhanded manner to other South Africans or other ordinary citizens. But how are we faring when compared to other countries insofar as this is concerned? I mean, is this an isolated incident, or are we seeing trends that really should get us speaking about this more than we are?
So I think abuse of journalists is something that's happening all over the world. It certainly isn't something that is, just specific to South Africa. And also it's harassment online and harassment in the real world. And so journalists are experiencing harassment at two different levels, which I think is particularly difficult. Also, what we're seeing is world leaders being very critical of the media. So you have your Trumps, Erdogan in Turkey, Modi in India, and I think that this is extraordinarily worrying, because if you've got your leaders saying, oh, these journalists are fake, you don't need to worry about them, you don't need to protect them, the media doesn't need to be protected, it isn't reporting in your interests, it opens journalists up for incredible abuse. And we have seen abuse all over the world. And often we have a sense that in America and in the UK there's kind of, less abuse. Not at all. Not at all. Unbelievable levels of abuse.
All right. Well, there's certainly no overstating how important the work that journalists do is, if I say so myself, during this period. So thank you very much for your time and for giving us your insights. Kate Skinner is the Executive Director of the South African National Editors Forum. A quick update, Mweli Masilela is okay. He's received treatment, and we understand that he's well on his way to recovery.